Hi, my name is Mangin, and I chose the book Happiness is a Warm Blanket, Charlie Brown by Charles M. Schultz. I chose this book because it shows a character with a range of emotions, and he doesn't let others get to him. I believe that it connects to the question through both a physical and emotional way. For example, in a class, the physical and emotional distractions can affect the way the student learns. Similarly, Linus's blanket is a physical object, yet creates an emotional safety net. When he loses his blanket, he can't seem to stop thinking about it, and essentially, he's distracted. My philosophy is that each child is an individual, and each will have their own thoughts. What might work for one may not work for another. The book connects that philosophy by the fact that Linus is his own individual, and even though others don't understand why he uses the blanket works for him. So, here is Happiness is a Warm Blanket, Charlie Brown by Charles M. Schultz. Linus loved his blanket. It made him feel safe and secure. It soaked up all his fears and frustrations. Linus didn't like to be away from his blanket ever, not even when his sister Lucy decided it was time to clean it. "Wash day," Lucy would shout. "It's in the rinse cycle," she'd say as Linus began to sweat. And finally, "It's in the spin cycle." At last, Linus would get his blanket back. Turn to your partner and tell them how you think Linus felt while the blanket was being washed. But lately, Linus's friends had begun teasing him about the blanket. Have you ever been teased about something that you like, something that you find comfort in? Turn to your partner and tell him what that was. They thought it was silly and got in the way. "You and that crazy blanket," Schroeder yelled. "I can't stand it," said Charlie Brown. Even Sally, who loved everything about Linus, had something to say about his blanket. "You're my sweet baboo," she told Linus, "but I could like you even more if you'd give up that blanket." Only Charlie Brown's dog Snoopy understood how great Linus's blanket really was, and he wanted it for himself. Linus had an even bigger problem than teasing or a jealous dog. His grandmother was coming to visit. Grandma didn't like Linus's blanket one bit. Lucy began to pester Linus more than ever. "If you don't give up that crazy blanket," she said, "Grandma's going to cut it into 1,000 pieces." Linus had to find a way to give up his blanket before Grandma came. But how? Turn to your partner and come up with ways you think that he would be able to give up his blanket. How would you give up a blanket if you had to? Linus tried a substitute, but that had drawbacks. Lucy locked the blanket in a closet, but Linus couldn't stay away. "You'd better give it back," Charlie Brown told Lucy. "What makes you say that, Charlie Brown?" Lucy asked. Grandma's visit was just a few days away, and nothing seemed to work. Linus was not going to give up his blanket, but someone else had other plans. Who's that other someone else? "Snoopy!" Linus screamed. Linus chased Snoopy everywhere, but Snoopy made a daring escape. Seeing Linus's blanket fly through the air gave Lucy an idea. Turn to your partner and talk about what you think Lucy's idea was. What do you think it's going to be? Lucy made a kite out of Linus's blanket to keep it away from him, but Linus wasn't fooled. "My blanket!" Things only got worse for Linus when Lucy let go of the kite. Linus watched his beloved blanket float off into the air. Linus's blanket was really gone this time. Staring up at the great big sky, he felt sadder than he ever had. "I bet I'll never see my blanket again." Can you turn to your partner and make a sad face? Still, Linus had to try to get his blanket back. He asked Charlie Brown to help him put an ad in the paper. Lost. One light blue blanket in the shape of a kite. Please return. Owner desperate. Even though his good friend Charlie Brown stayed by his side, Linus could barely sleep without his blanket. He kept thinking about it, wondering where it could be. Soon, Linus got some good news. It was a telegram from the Air Rescue Service. They found my blanket, he told Charlie Brown. They're mailing it back to me. Linus was thrilled to get his blanket back, but his happiness did not last long. Grandma was arriving that day, and Lucy had come up with a surefire way of curing Linus of his blanket habit once and for all. I buried it, she said. Looking at this picture here, how do you think Linus feels that she buried it? Linus dug and dug and dug, but he could not find his blanket. Just when things seemed hopeless, Linus's blanket seemed to find him. How do you think his blanket found him? Who brought it to him? It was time for Linus to face Grandma. She was not happy that Linus still had his blanket, but Linus stood his ground. I need this blanket, he told Grandma. It's the only real security I have. After all, everyone had someone or something that helped them get through the day. It wasn't just Linus with his blanket. Sally had her sweet baboo, Linus. Schroeder had his piano. Lucy had Schroeder. Snoopy had his dinner bowl. Even Grandma had her coffee. Can you turn to your partner and tell them what you have that makes you feel comfortable? Linus made a good argument for keeping his blanket, but Grandma would not listen. Hand it over, Linus asked. You want me to hand it over? Sure enough, Grandma took Linus's blanket away. But Grandma didn't really get Linus's blanket. He had swapped it with a dish towel and tricked her. After Grandma had gone, Linus got out his real blanket. Where did he hide his blanket? Turn to your partner and tell him where he hid it. Charlie Brown was happy for Linus. Everything was back to normal, and Linus's blanket was safe. Still, Linus was a little sad to see Grandma go. I'm going to miss the thrill of the chase, he told Charlie Brown. Luckily for Linus, someone would always want his blanket. Who's that someone? And that was Happiness is a Warm Blanket, Charlie Brown.